I meet that with you don't get to call it a fire sale if you're saying, okay, except for these like 7 guys. Yeah. Penguins, you don't have 7 good players. Something I've wanted to talk about for a couple of weeks now, and it's not totally related to this next topic, but I have to get it in. The sellers are not going to be the sellers this year.
What do you mean?
A lot of the names that we've thrown out there, Ivan Provorov, David Savard, like, why are the Blue Jackets trading away a top 4 defenseman? Why are the Canadians, if they're going to make a push for the playoffs, isn't it more valuable to get in the playoffs and get those guys that experience? So we don't need to have a long conversation about that, but every year you go into the season thinking these guys will be available at the deadline, and then the list is usually pretty similar to that. This year, there's some names that I wouldn't be surprised. Like Frank Vetrano is one that ended up signing and staying, so now he's off that list. I don't know if the Blue Jackets are going to sell anymore. I don't think that they should. I definitely don't want them to at this point. You're a Canadiens fan. You declared that yesterday. Do you want your Canadiens selling?
I think there's a difference between being a seller and being an asset manager. Like if you have an expiring free agent and like it's not a bottom of the roster player, but maybe like a bottom 6 player or a second or third pairing defenseman who's on an expiring deal, and you can get a player back plus or get just a player back who's maybe a little bit worse with term and on a good deal. Like that's not selling. That is just managing and moving around your assets. And I think that those teams can still do that without sacrificing their playoff position.
Ivan Provorov for Josh Brown.
Sure.
Something clean like that. That's all to say, you wonder, well, who's going to sell now? Enter the Pittsburgh Penguins, because per Responsible DFSer, it's called Responsible Gambler, is the name of this outlet. An NHL source close to the situation has confirmed to RG that everyone on the current roster except Captain Sidney Crosby, longtime alternate captain Evgeni Malkin, veteran forward Bryan Rust, forward Philip Tomasino, and defenseman Owen Pickering is available for the right price before the March 7th NHL trade deadline. Okay. I meet that with you don't get to call it a fire sale if you're saying, okay, except for these like 7 guys. Yeah. Penguins, you don't have 7 good players. If you're doing a fire sale, you're Crosby available, Malkin available.
That was my big takeaway. It was like the Penguins are making everyone available except the guys with value.
Yeah. So if you're calling here are the guys that they could be talking about. And Responsible Gambler asked the source, so does that mean Kris Letang is available? And the source said, I don't know. So Kris Letang might not even be available. But if you were to take the players who were not just mentioned, maybe Kris Letang, Erik Karlsson, Rickard Rakell, Michael Bunting, Kevin Hayes, Ryan Graves, Marcus Pettersson. Honestly, I was going to say something graphic. That's not moving my needle, so to speak.
I can probably guess what you were gonna say. Pettersson is probably like one of the more valuable pieces there, but like Erik Karlsson, throwing that name out there, how much appeal does that have to anybody at this point?
Nobody should want Erik Karlsson.
No.
$10 million, bad player.
I don't know if I would say bad player, but like definitely not the guy that you're going to be paying for. Like not the guy who signed that deal. And it's just like, what are the Penguins attempting to accomplish by, and I think the Responsible Gambler report says that like, they're not looking to rebuild. They are looking to retool. Like they think that they can still contend. They just want to fire sale and move some guys in and out and change their roster. Isn't that how they got here in the first place?
They've been retooling for like 4 straight years.
Right. And as a result, they don't have anybody in the system who, like, I think they're like 20th in prospect rankings. They don't have actual quote unquote like capital G guys beyond like their core, their aging core, in which case some of their aging core guys may not be capital G guys anymore. Like wouldn't consider Erik Karlsson a capital G guy anymore. I don't know if I'd consider Kris Letang a capital G guy anymore.
No.
Like Malkin's having a bad year. Crosby's obviously still a dog, still a guy, but how much do you even have there to do a fire sale in which you're going to get anything back that helps you retool your team on the fly?
I don't know if we did this on the show or off the show, but at some point I did count how many guys the Penguins had, and I think they had the lowest number of guys that I've counted on a team. Obviously, other teams have guys who are not as good as Sidney Crosby, but like 2 surefire guys, and then from there you're like, is this a guy? Is this a guy? Like Kevin Hayes was a guy.
Was a guy.
And that is, shout out Kevin Hayes, his fingerprints are all over this thing. The Penguins have so many former guys that their idea of retooling by peeling off a 37-year-old Erik Karlsson is so unrealistic to me. So I think,
especially when you consider Erik Karlsson has a no movement clause. So
I think he should want to get out there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but like he still can control where he wants to go. Like if he doesn't want to live in a certain place, if he doesn't want to play in a certain market, they may not be able to get the best deal possible to them because of Erik Karlsson's no movement clause.
Great comment from Rickard Rakell, who that is for sure that person's name. Less fire sale, more of a garage sale.
Like more of an estate sale because they're already dead.
Well, I mean, it's funny because I looked up the definition of fire sale. The original definition of fire sale is just selling this remaining stuff off after a building has caught on fire, which seems very appropriate for the situation because the shit has been burnt to the ground, not by their own doing, but somebody set it on fire, and now you just have ashes left that you're trying to sell. I think fire sale works.
Doesn't who said it in the Taylor in the chat makes a good point. Does this not remind you of Erik Karlsson's former team and sort of how they approach things, where they had a lot of guys, they had a really good core in San Jose, and they kept trying to keep that window open as the pieces peeled off. Some of the older guys got a little bit worse, and they just kept saying, we can retool, we can keep this window open until it got to a point where things were so bad and like so like bleak that they got stuck in a position where they were the worst team in the league for a couple of years. And sure, they ended up with Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith because of it. But like, does it not feel inevitable that the Penguins are going to end up in that same place and have some really, really bleak years until they luck out in the lottery?
Yes, and far be it for the Penguins to ever luck out in the lottery. What's scary though, if you're a Penguins fan, is that this has worked a couple of times in recent years. So the Penguins are going to believe in retooling. The Bruins retooled. That, though, it needs to be noted, was a unique circumstance in which a veteran, like first and a half line center, came back and played for you for basically free in David Krejci. So you were just gifted that. So many things went perfectly.
And they didn't have a bunch of dead money.
Right.
Which the Penguins are almost certainly going to have a bunch of dead money, whether it's Jari, whether it's the retaining on Karlsson, if they are able to find a partner. Like, they're not going to be able to move a lot of these guys without retaining money.
The other team that retooled brilliantly is, of course, the current President's Trophy favorite Washington Capitals. And the but there is they've drafted well.
Yeah.
They've done it the right way and then taken some risks that are paying off. The Penguins aren't in the Bruins position of a few years ago, and they're not in the Capitals position of a few years ago, where someone's just going to walk back to them for basically nothing, and they're going to get a bunch of sweetheart deals. I know that we love that Sidney Crosby makes $8.7 million against the cap, but as you said, Pete, they've got too many other guys making bad money that offsets that. Sean?
No, I was just going to say, too, that like with the Capitals, I think you could make the argument that their goal wasn't even to really win hockey games. It was just to like be kind of not terrible while Ovi was finishing out his career in his record chase. And Penguins can't even really do that. I always wonder with these situations how much of this is like the GM and how much of it is ownership being like, we've got fucking Sidney Crosby. You're not getting rid of him, and you're not blowing this shit up while he's around, because I don't think owners really understand how to run hockey teams.
Well,
shout out John Henry.
I was going to say John Henry famously had Mookie Betts and a lot of great players in Boston, and he said, Get those guys out of here.
Mookie Betts wouldn't sign for $8.7 million. Now would he, Pete?
That's true.
I would have offered him fucking 87 a year at this rate.
Do you think John Henry bought the Penguins because he was like, ooh, let's look at these player salaries. They're not making anything.
Yeah, he did. He thought that it was just all the same as Bate. He was like, I'm getting a sweetheart deal on this team. Whoever the GM is, that's my kind of guy.
Yeah.
Now that person's smart.
We all silly like the mayor.